What's up, guys? Alex here, On Point Leather. I think we're finally ready for me to start working on my dream of becoming a shoemaker. So as far as the planning process goes for these shoes, I've bought several materials, and I don't know if they're the materials that I want for the job, or I know for a fact I've bought some materials I don't need because I've bought multiple types of the same type of material. So to start off with, I got patterns here for the Chuck Taylor. That's going to be my first shoe that I make, sort of. District Leather Supply does a lot of shoes. If you follow their Instagram page, they post a lot of shoes that they either like or some that they've made. I can't tell because they're pretty good at making shoes from what I can tell, and they make clones of like Air Force Ones, Air Jordans, a lot of Nikes, different things like that, and they'll make clones of those, and they do a really good job doing their own style of reproduction inside their shop. But then I think they also will throw up a picture of some shoes that they bought that they particularly like, and I can't tell the difference between the ones that they made and the ones they're buying, because I'm not a Air Jordan, Air Force One fan, so I just can't spot a copy. So they sell things like lasts, shoemaking supplies, patterns, that sort of thing, and they came out with Chuck Taylors. I wear Chuck Taylors when I lift in the gym. They're a good lifting shoe that was recommended to me when I got into it. It was like, I asked, what's a good lifting shoe? And I was told the Chuck Taylor because it's a very flat surface and it gives you a flat, unsquishy grip on the ground when you're doing things like squats. So I bought, when they came out with them, I bought the Chuck Taylor last in my size, and I bought the patterns to go with it, and I was excited for everything to come, and I was thinking I could just cut out the pieces from the patterns, sew them together, throw them on the last, start working my way through. I've never made shoes before other than a pair of moccasins very early on. And what I learned is that when I was looking for the soles of the shoe, that you can't buy Chuck Taylor soles. What they were doing, because I messaged them and asked, what they're doing is they're buying a pair of Converse Chuck Taylors and then robbing the sole off of this usable pair of shoes and then putting it on a pair of Chuck Taylors that they made out of leather or whatever material they want to make it out of. Which is fine. It seems wasteful to me, but if that's the only way you can do it, then that's how you have to get your Chuck Taylor soles. It seems like a pretty expensive pair of soles. I think the cheapest I've seen them for, without hunting for a deal or anything, I've seen Converse shoes going for about maybe $50 on sale. I don't really want to pay that for just a pair of soles, especially paying that for a pair of shoes that I'm just planning on cutting right up and ripping the sole off of, because I don't know exactly how to rip a sole off of Chuck Taylors. I looked it up. I looked up the making process for shoes like Chuck Taylors, and it's a vulcanized piece of rubber, which means the rubber's put on in a very loose, stretchy form. It's stretched around the shoe and then superheated, and it shrinks down and hardens around that. So I don't know how you can take it off of there and then reapply it to a different shoe effectively. So I thought, well, I won't use Chuck Taylor soles. I'll use these Margam soles because they're nice and flat. Margam is a well-respected name in the sneaker industry. I know if a shoe has Margam soles on it, it's typically, that's a note of quality if they're going to use Margam soles. So I thought, okay, I'll use Margam soles. And also with Margam soles, you have this this groove around the edge here for your stitches to slip into. So these are, especially on the higher quality sneakers, these are sewn on instead of just vulcanized on to the shoe. Another thing I didn't know, because I'm new to this, is that when you buy a pair of soles, you should get a pair of lasts to match the sole. So I have Chuck Taylor lasts, and I bought Margam soles. Well, the Chuck Taylor lasts don't really go on these soles very well. So they go on there, it's not great. And to last a shoe onto a sole like this that isn't the proper sole, I think you're fighting an uphill battle. I was told that you shouldn't do that. You should use a last. I was told that you should use a last with the sole that it was intended for. So I bought from the company that I bought these Margam soles from the matching lasts for these soles. So these lasts go on these soles. They fit on there great. Obviously intended for this product. This is called the Morgan last. So my hope is that I can take these patterns and then apply them to this Morgan last and stitch this Margam sole onto a Chuck Taylor pattern set and make a decent pair of shoes. I don't know if that's going to be the end result, especially considering it's going to be my first shoe, so there'll obviously be a lot of learning errors. But we're going to try it, and we're gonna find out whether or not that's going to work for us. I think I'm going to go with canvas. I typically work with leather, but I work with canvas when it suits me. I'm going to use this canvas. You can get this from Maker's Leather Supply. They sell it. You can get canvas at a lot of different places, but this canvas is particularly thick. I went to Joann Fabric over Christmas last year because I needed some canvas quickly, and the canvas I got there felt like it was about half as thick as this stuff. So this is sturdy canvas. I don't know what the weight of it is, but it's good. It's good canvas. I'm going to use this. We're gonna try it. I've got it laying around already. Chuck Taylors are made out of canvas the way that they come, or at least a lower quality canvas. So this should be an upgrade from that. And we're gonna go canvas, Margam. I think I'm gonna put cork in the footbed. I don't know if I'm gonna put in a leather midsole or not. We'll see. There's not a ton of room in here for a lot of extra, just the way that this is filled in. It's not like making your own welted sole where you're throwing in your midsole and sewing on a welt, which is something that I do plan on doing later on. So after this, what I like to do, I've seen people take Chuck Taylors, the tops of them, and sew them on to a Goodyear welted boot style sole. I've seen them just make an upper and Goodyear welt it to a boot sole. They look very unique. I think they look kind of cool. Definitely a statement piece as far as shoes go, but I want to give that a try. So we'll get into welting and making Goodyear welted shoes later on. This is going to be an entry-level project, just making the uppers and sewing it on to some Margam soles and seeing how they perform. So I think in the footbed will probably just be cork, perhaps a layer of leather for midsole, and we'll go from there. Initial thoughts on the pattern pieces by District Leather. So what you get is when you order a Chuck Taylor pattern, you order to your size. So I ordered 11.5, and you get one of these. You flip it for the reverse. You get your lining piece, slightly different size here. The heel reinforcement piece, your heel strip at the end, the back of your heel. You get your tongue vamp, And you get your vamp lining. Again, slightly different size here. This material seems to be some sort of compressed fiberboard. It's not wood or anything. It's just a hardened fiberboard type of paper. It's thick enough that it's a quality material to make a pattern out of. However, you can damage this. It's something to be careful of. It's shipped in a big brown folder with a Sharpie on there, do not bend. So I'm glad that the post office respected that. They don't always do that. So you could essentially get these and they could be bent. And I don't know if that would ruin them or not. I'm going to try to be careful with them, as they're somewhat expensive. It's $75 for this pattern. It's also, I think you can buy a pair of Converse for $75 pretty much all day long. So I think that it would be possible to buy a pair of Converse, and since they have this set up to where you essentially need to rob a pair of Converse for the sole, the way that it is, you might just be able to buy that pair of Converse, cut it apart, take some care, and use that Converse as the pattern. I don't know, I haven't tried that, but it makes sense to me that you could cut off a pair of Converse that fits you, cut it apart carefully at the seams, and then use those pieces as your pattern. Again, I don't know. There's no instructions that come with this. The only thing in the packet was this stuff right here. A little sucker that District Leather Supply usually throws in, the Jolly Ranchers, a sucker, something like that. Got a butterscotch Dum Dum sucker, and I ate it. And it had a receipt. So no instructions. These lines here, I believe them to be fold lines, I think, or they are overlap lines. So you have your back end here, you have your heel strip, might just overlap right there at the lines. This could be where the sole comes up to. So about like so, sits in there, and that's where the sole will be. I'm not quite sure. I don't know, because you want to fold your piece over so you don't have a raw edge, either of canvas or of leather. You want to give it a fold just so everything has a finished look to it. So I don't know if you need to cut extra around here to account for that fold, or if this pattern does that already. I don't know if it does account for that already. I don't know how far in it expects you to fold. A lot of unanswered questions that will only be answered with doing it. You just got to do it sometimes. And so that's what we're going to do. We're just going to cut this out. I think we're going to cut it out just as the pattern comes. We're just going to cut out pieces of canvas with the pattern and see if those are big enough and if they're going to work. And if not, canvas isn't that expensive. I have a lot of it laying around, so we can just cut out more with an allowance for folding. So hopefully this looks okay on camera. Essentially, what I was talking about is I don't know if there is fold over allowance for the edges here, or if I am supposed to add myself fold over allowance. So we're going to try cutting out the patterns as they come, because there's no instructions. So we're just going to figure it out, and I'm going to use a silver pin. There may be some silver pin markings on my shoes when I'm done here, because there's a lot of these little holes, these slots. These are for eyelets, obviously. This designates the Converse logo, or any logo that you want to put on it. I'm not going to put a Converse logo on these shoes because Converse didn't make them. These eyelets here are for the side vent eyelets. I believe this slash line here designates where the sole, the rubber sole, will come up to. And I believe this side slash designates where the heel strip will lay over and join the two pieces in the back. So I don't know if it would be a good idea for me to mark that on with a pin. If I do mark it with a pin, then it will probably show up in the final product, unless all of those areas are covered up like I thought. So if I put a circle at each one of these eyelets, ideally these circles will be covered up with an eyelet. Eyelet will go right through there. And if I put a line right here, the back heel strip should cover that up. This right here, I think, is a stitch line, but I'm not sure. I think that you need to put in some type of stiffening agent by your eyelets. So that might designate where your stiffening agent goes. And then, because we've marked the others, we'll mark this bottom strip here where I think the rubber sole will cover. I think this silver pin here, I can probably get it out of the fabric if I need to. So this has an arrow pointing. I'm not sure what it's pointing at. This vamp here has cuts right here. So the way it should lay down, I believe the cuts there maybe line up with the arrow. I'm not really sure. I'm not gonna trace on that arrow right now. I can always trace it on later if I think that it would be handy to have that. So this is our pattern piece. I think just being as it's canvas, I can probably cut this out with scissors pretty well. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the camera. I'm going to do essentially this with every other one of my pattern pieces. When we come back, these should all be cut out. Okay guys, so I think when I signed off the last time, I was going to go ahead and finish cutting out all the pattern pieces, which I did. They're right here. I cut out enough for one shoe, and I didn't know at the time whether or not these patterns right here were going to account for a fold over allowance. So with this canvas, the way that it is it easily unravels here. Let's see if I can get to focus in where I want it to. If I don't fold this over and ensure that this edge is protected like this, so it can't fray, then that's exactly what it's going to do. So I need to do that. So I cut out different patterns with the fold over allowance. And the way that I'm going to do it is I'm going to give myself a 1/4 inch fold over allowance. And the reason for that is because I'm going to fold it over using this 1/4 inch double-sided sticky tape. It's the thinnest tape that I have, and I think that's going to be the easiest way to get that canvas to fold over, stay, and then I can sew the edges and get them to stay folded over. The reason that I think a fold over allowance is necessary with these is this is my pair of Converse Chuck Taylors that I'm going to be. This is the pair that I wear now at the gym. And so I took, let's see here. what I did is I took this piece here and I lined up the holes on the eyelets with the holes in this pattern where those would go. And I lined them up, and the holes line up perfectly with the edge of the shoe here. So there should be a little bit more coming off this pattern. This is the one where I cut perfectly to the pattern. There should be a little bit more coming off that I can fold over and sew. Leather needs to fold over also, so I'm not quite sure. Again, there's no instructions with these. It's just kind of a learning process as I go along. Another thing with these, so inside here is a sewn piece of fabric, and that should be the heel counter. I'll show you the pattern piece for this. The heel reinforcement piece looks like it's going to go right inside there, and so on the inside. But there's also some rigidity to this heel. This heel has some structure to it, and I don't know what material is being used inside of that heel. I bought a lot of the materials that District Leather Supply was selling, including reinforcement pieces and things like that, but none of them feel extra sturdy as what that heel counter feels like. So I may end up just using a stiffer piece of veg tan, and I think that would work just fine. So that's where we're at. I have now cut out enough patterns for the shoes. I have 2 shoes worth of patterns here. It actually took quite a bit of material. So if you're going to be trying this out, you need a decent amount of leather or canvas. I'm not sure exactly how many square feet you're going to want, but a good amount, and we'll keep working on it. Now I'm going to go through and do what I said with folding over the edges and get those all ready to go together, and that's going to be how I spend my next few hours. Okay, so I want to do a process update based on where I'm at right now. I cut out the pieces. I cut out enough outside of the pattern to do a fold over allowance so I could fold the edge of the canvas over and sew it. So this is what I have right now. This is just one of the heel supports. So I've cut it out, I folded it over, I sewed behind it, I folded that. Now it's a finished edge that won't unravel. I was getting ready to cut this out, and I cut the bottom part of it out, and I'm just eyeballing about ½ an inch, and then I'll show you how I'm decided to fold it over and adhere it. But I'm eyeballing about ½ an inch allowance around the pattern draw for the fold over, and then I realized I don't know if the patterns have an allowance for lasting materials, so something to bring around the last and hammer down and adhere to the midsole. I don't know if it gives me that, or if I'm supposed to incorporate that myself on the pattern. So I'm gonna roll with this, and there's a good chance that when I get it all sewn together and everything, I won't have enough to wrap around the last, in which case we'll make it again. But I've already scrapped one bit of patterns that I've cut out and cut them out again with the fold over allowance, and I may have to do that again. But like I said, this is my first time doing this, and I'm going to show you guys the mistakes that I make, and you guys can watch this and follow along and maybe not make the same mistakes that I do. All right, I wanted to show you my current process right now on getting this raw edge of canvas folded over. This has been a process in the making, so this could change. I may reshoot this shot, I don't know. But as of right now, I have my pattern drawn down. And what I do is I fold on the pattern lines around, just like this. I do not fold the part that's going to be lasted around the shoe, the part that's going to be folded over. That I haven't been messing with that part. But any other part, I've been folding on this line. And I'm trying to get a memory on the canvas here. So it kind of sits up like that. And then I take my hammer and I just sort of help along this crease. I just roll that edge over. I'm trying to get the material really comfortable with the fact that it's going to be folded. It's hard to do it on this continuous curve, but on the straight lines, like if I was going to fold this one over, I would pound that over, hammer it down flat. Then, since this is a curved line, I'm going to use the Maker's tape because it's better than the Tanner's Bond tape. And I just cut little strips of it like this. Maybe even smaller than that. And I press it along this curve here. And there can be small gaps. If I did a big long strip, I would have to fold it over this this curve here, and it just wouldn't work as well. It can be done. I think this is easier. If you guys have cut this tape before with scissors, you probably found that it gummed up the scissors really bad. For some reason, these little thread nippers don't gum up when you cut it, so I was really happy to find that out. Okay, then the best way to get this paper off is just with a sharp point. Stab it, paper comes off. One thing I like to do is look at where I'm going to be folding here, and then also where I might potentially fold again. So if you see right there, if I fold over this way and then I fold over this way, the fabric would double up and this stuff gets thick pretty quick, noticeably. So in that area, I'll just come up. These thread nippers don't do too well with this, but that's what's in my hand. I'll just clip off that corner right there. And now we just fold this over. Try to make sure we don't fold over too far. Want to keep the pattern line right. So I think the hammering not only helps the adhesion of the sticky tape, but also helps to flatten down the seam and keep everything nice and flat. So now we have the heel support, what do they call it? Heel reinforcement piece. It is folded over when it is sewn inside the shoe, and your heel comes up against it just like this. It won't have a raw edge to unravel. And then I'm not going to go sew it like I did this piece. I am going to leave it just like this, and then when it's time to actually put it in the shoe, that sew line that goes in there will double. It'll act as securing into the shoe and also securing this fold that's been put into it. Okay, so just folded this piece over, showed you guys how to do that. This will probably be where I end this video. The rest of it is going to be doing this to all of the pieces, and when I come back for the next video, that should be done. And I believe the next step would be sewing them together. So I'm going to end it here and keep checking back, because the more I post, the more these shoes are going to come together, and hopefully you guys are learning as much as I am as we do these. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.